You're watching Mallrats, a Star Wars podcast. Thank you for listening. Alright, before this episode starts, we're recording this halfway through or after, and we've had some technical difficulties, whether like with our schedules or with microphones.
Microphones. Technology works great when it works.
Yeah, or
and to be fair,
incompetence.
Ignorance. Ignorance. Yeah, we're still
issues.
learning. We're still learning how to do this, and we're getting really close. And it's weird that we didn't have this tech problem early on. It's just lately. So I guess it's when it's a non-episode thing. But anyways, so
Bring back Kenobi.
So the first, 20, 30 minutes or so, Nolan's mic doesn't always pick up right like it does now.
Yes, it sounds here, but
yeah, his
first
voice,
30 minutes or it's
ish
over on the other side of the room.
It's picking up on my microphone.
Yes.
So you can still hear him, and we're going to normalize the audio track to bring it up, but we apologize for that. We'll get that stuff fixed so it doesn't happen again. But don't let that turn you off to listening to this. And
we'll try to fix it.
And majority of the second novel, we talk about it. It's going to be fine. It's just early on, he might be a little challenging to hear right off the bat.
Challenging. All right.
Okay.
That's it.
Cool. Thanks for listening, and we're gonna cue up the beginning now.
Welcome back to the Mallrats podcast.
Hello.
Oh, okay. This is our second literary analysis.
Literary analysis critique.
We're going to do books 2 and 3.
Yeah, we were going to do them individually, but I think we're going to just throw the second and the third together so we can get right back to our episode commentaries and stuff. Save time, and if the audience enjoys these, great, we can do more down the road, but just in case you're not into the books or care at all, we want to provide content soon about other aspects. So
hopefully this won't be 2.5 hours.
Oh, it won't be 2.5 hours. I don't have that energy.
Or a special guest.
Or a special. Well, as far as we know, no special guest. We're going to change things up in that we're going to do our Q&A at the very beginning. So as Nolan gets that up, there was some Star Wars news I found yesterday. They announced a director for the Ahsoka show, which is going to start filming here in the next month or two. There's a director by the name of Peter Ramsey. Does that name mean anything to you?
No.
It didn't to me. But then I looked up his filmographies because they said he was an Oscar winner. And I'm like, I would swear I'd remember this name. He was the director of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, as well as Rise of the Guardians. So he has a lot of experience in the animated worlds.
Is Ahsoka animated?
No, it's not. It's not. But, dealing with maybe other people's intellectual property, IP, they say that he's coming on for at least one episode. So I don't know anything else about Ahsoka other than Ahsoka.
We'll see if there's a rotation like with the other shows.
Yeah, if they get their little stable of people and just cycle through them. So I found that, and I thought we could talk about that briefly, which I think that was brief enough, as we enjoyed those movies, and especially the Spider-Man one. So
not so much Rise of the Guardians.
Well,
it's a kids movie.
It's a kids. It came out 10 years ago.
That
so
doesn't
yeah,
make it a kids movie.
Well, I mean, if you saw it when you were a kid, I could see how one would think that it's animated, but not all animated movies are, I think, directed towards children. Do you think all animated shows are children?
I'm trying to think of an exception.
South Park?
That's not a movie.
It is. Bigger, longer, uncut.
That doesn't count.
It does. It's animated.
Oh, I just got the funny behind that title.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So you got that now?
Yeah, I got it.
But anyway, so we're looking forward to it. It's just news. I didn't give you a heads up about it because I forgot about it until I just checked my notes and I had it all queued up. Are you ready for Q&A for today? Was there anything else you want to talk about Star Wars related? We're under a month and a half or so until Obi-Wan shows up. So that's going to be something exciting. Are you getting?
Going to be exciting.
You think they're going to drop another trailer at some point? Maybe on Star Wars Day?
Well, yeah.
May 4th?
But, well, definitely. Because you said The last one was only a teaser.
They said teaser, but now they're changing it to trailer, as you pointed out to me when we talked about it last podcast. But I would think that there would be something else that comes out in order to help pump it up even more so. Right now they're stuck in the Moon Knight series, so that'll cover the gap between between now and Obi-Wan. So
well, that depends on who's watching it.
Yeah, I guess if you're Disney Plus, if it's Marvel, and maybe you're Marvel and Star Wars, maybe it's an assumption. I don't know. So did you have anything else you wanted to hit before we get into the Q&A and then the content?
I do not.
You don't? Okay.
Am I supposed to?
No, you're fine. I didn't know if you just had something banked back in your subconscious or whatever you wanted to talk about.
Our first and only question
Yes.
is from Sarah.
And you said we've had this for a while, but we just didn't.
We've had this for at least a week. I just forgot about it.
Oh, a week? Oh, well.
Well, it says March 22nd.
Couple weeks, but we had a little bit of off time between recording the previous. Okay.
Sarah asked, I've been rewatching Mandalorian with your commentary.
Oh.
And just listened to the episode where you briefly discussed how the show would be different if Mando hadn't decided to save Grogu. This is a little behind where you are now, but I wondered how much of a role do you think Grogu's cuteness played in Mando saving him? Or was it his display of the Force with the Mudhorn that intrigued Mando to go after him? Or
interesting.
what if Grogu had been a putrid, belching pile of slime? Would that have changed anything except the amount of money Disney made off of merchandising?
Okay, so let's break that up. Why don't we just unpack that? Let's start from the back of it.
What if he'd been not good looking?
Not good looking in the merchandising. Well, Sarah, thanks for listening. And if you're going through the Mando rewatch, you said rewatch, so you watched it once, so you're not going through it the first time. Because I know one of our fans in particular has told me that they listen to our podcast without ever watching the Mandalorian, and they're able to follow along. So some people teach their own. But with Baby Grogu, they filmed that whole series, during 2018, maybe into early 2019, before they premiered, at the end of 2019, and nobody leaked anything about merchandising. There was no, no pre-orders of things to come. Before the first Star Wars movie came out, toys, you had to do a ship, send in proof of purchases for a club to get some, items and stuff. They weren't ready for it then, for the excitement. Same thing here. So I don't think that they were banking on the cuteness, because they had shot the whole first season and probably had the second season almost written by then.
I don't think the emphasis of the question was to put it onto Disney made off of advertising.
The cuteness?
I think the point is, would it have changed anything?
Well, we didn't know. I guess if... So I guess it does... Do they bow to public love of a character, I guess is how I heard it. And the public hadn't been exposed to it yet before they had successfully recorded the entire first season and edited. If it was some gelatinous blob, I it might have been harder for people to fall in love with that. You know what I mean? But I don't know. What do you think about that part?
I think, well, this is a bit of an interesting question. But
yeah.
I think that, I guess the whole point of the story is that Grogu is basically the Mandalorian. He's a foundling. He has to get back to his people, or if not, just turn into a Mandalorian. But I think it's what it represents in the Mandalorian's mind. So it could look like anything. I mean, looking like Baby Yoda compared to a tiny child, it still would have been the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the difference between not being a foundling, or whatever they call it, to being a foundling.
Yeah, and I think that...
He still would have saved him either way.
Yeah, I think from the first episode, right where he instantly saves him, I don't think... He didn't know what he was... He's probably used to going out and getting bad people, bad guys, killing them, taking them in, warm or cold, whatever. And then I think that maybe more so than the cuteness, he realized it's a kid. And even if it is... Yeah, the innocence of it, and he couldn't kill a child. People talk about if you could time travel, would you go? And some people are like, oh, I would go and kill Hitler when he's a baby to keep away all of everything that happened. But then people could get offended by that. Well, but it's a child, hasn't made those choices yet. But with Grogu, we don't know what he is, who he is. It was a wonderful surprise. But I don't think he saw any profit in the baby. I don't think he looked at it as a way to benefit.
He just saw himself in it.
Saw himself as, which we don't know yet how he was a foundling, but I think it's definitely one where he saw this child that needed protection from hitmen being sent, and he being one of those hitmen to come and take care of him. So I wouldn't say so much cuteness, maybe more just being a child is what probably saved him. Which is interesting because Mando is a solitary being who has no family, who is, just flies around solo doing his job. I don't think he was looking for a pet or a friend. I don't think he thought here it is. I don't think he planned ahead. I think it was a reactionary. I can't kill this thing. Grab it and go. So because if we keep going into episode 2, and 3, he goes and turns that thing in. Even after the Mudhorn in episode 2 is going to kill him and Grogu saves him, he still turns Grogu over because that's the job. It's just that he didn't kill him. Right?
Took a while to get there.
Yeah. And maybe it was the saving of it that made him ultimately, when Grogu saved him from the Mudhorn and he stewed on that, and then he turned him in. Maybe it was that, wow, this thing saved me, that he felt something, so he went back and rescued him and broke him out in the episode 3, the sin. But yeah, so I think that's kind of a nice little synopsis of all of that, at least based on what I'm thinking about it. Do you counter much of that or any of it?
Very good question.
Very multi-pronged, but yeah, I enjoyed that.
I don't want to get off on a tangent here.
Oh, okay.
It's called the sin.
Yeah.
What's the sin in it? Is it breaking the guild code and bringing back the child and asking where it went? Is it blowing up the Imperial stash? What's the sin? Because we see all the titles are based around it. The Gunslinger, the Believer, the Marshal.
Yeah.
Because he's a character. What is the sin?
I think it's open for interpretation, just like when we have the episode later called The Redemption. You might be able to make an argument for multiple people. Maybe it's just more of a theme for the episode and not so much, you said, the Gunslinger, the Marshal, specific individuals. This is an opportunity to provide maybe an overall scope of it. Maybe his sin is, betraying his ideals and he knows it's wrong, but he still pushes that kid off and sells the kid. Maybe it is breaking the code. Maybe it's just all of it, how his whole life has just been thrown into a blender all of a sudden. Yeah, the world turns upside down. And, I think that maybe where the sin comes from. I don't think it's, necessarily the Empire is being punished for the sin of trying to kill or extract DNA from another being for cloning purposes. I don't think that's the sin, but I think the overall theme of the different characters, is one to maybe think about. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much. It was Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much. We really appreciate you listening. That's keep sending stuff in if you ever have questions I wonder about, just shoot them off, and hopefully we get to them much sooner than this break that we've been going on. So we'll get back into our routine. But again, Sarah, thank you so much. So, we ready to jump into our literary critique now?
Are you?
Born ready, dude. So the first book, if you didn't get a chance, we are spoiling, the books. So if you never want to read them, but you just want to hear about the story, that's fine. But I really suggest reading them, as I have suggested the one we did previously, book number 1 in the Darth Bane trilogy, Path of Destruction. I've recommended multiple people, and each person that's read it, maybe they lied to me, but they really seemed in our discussions to really enjoy it and want to finish the trilogy on their own. 2 of the 3 did anyways. But but
Good right there.
but all three they said, oh yeah, I was surprised. I think that's what they said. I was surprised that I enjoyed it
I hate
because
Star Wars, but it's really good.
exactly because I held off Star Wars books for so long just because I'm like, how are you gonna? As I said last time, how are you gonna do lightsabers in this? You just can't. But the character and the motivation and it just really has played out really well. So so read Path to Destruction. We're not going to go into much detail. We might reference a few things from it, but we're going to focus on first the second book called The Rule of Two. This takes place 10 years after the previous novel, where Darth Bane at the very end, spoilers again, at the end of book one, eliminated the entire...
Spoiler.
Well, every time I say spoiler, you roll your eyes. I don't understand. I'm just giving extra coverage, so no one's
burned. A lot of 10-year skips. Though.
They do.
Every single time there's a time skip, it's 10 years.
That is true. Nice and easy to think of, I guess. Because we had him being mid to high 20s, in the first book.
50.
Well, this one, Rule 2, he'd be, pushing 40, mid-30s to 40. But at the end, he kills off all the Sith, and he comes across a little girl who, unbeknownst to her little bouncer friend, it's like a floating fuzzball, who is force sensitive, doesn't talk but can communicate through the force, died, was shot by remnants of the Jedi army. They were just out killing all these force sensitives. And Rain, rather, her name's Rain, she didn't want to... she was upset, and she killed them using the force, and Bane sees the carnage and takes her on as an apprentice. So that's how the very first book ends. Now, yes, the second book is a 10-year jump, but the prologue at the beginning of the story really just kind of continues where that book left off. We did talk briefly, if you recall, Nolan, was... Drew Karpyshyn had really free reign to write about, as far as we know, free reign to write about whatever, the creation and the story of Darth Bane.
Because there's bouncers.
There are bouncers and a little kid by the name of Rain, and because in the comics he had to stick with the canon at the time storyline that's been laid out. But at that point, Bane was already in the Sith. It wasn't about his ascension, so that's what he got to play around with. So, in the prologue, we are introduced to a character named Darovit, who is a friend. How do you say it? I'm guessing that's how it's spelled.
I don't want to be weird and say Darovit, but...
Darovit? How about Darovit?
I like it. Darovit.
Darovit. Well, we won't have to talk about him too much. But Darovit is a cousin of Rain, so they grew up together, very friends. I don't know if cousin we find out right away, but I definitely know that they were friends. And he was in the comic as a little kid. But he survived the thought bomb, and we jump to the prologue with him, where he goes to everybody's dead. All the Sith disappeared. The Jedi disappeared in the caves. Those that didn't stay on planet, all died. So he went into the cave and he saw the floating orb that we talked about. A shimmering floating orb that when he, it's really cold near it, he touches it and he senses all of the anguish and souls that are just trapped in this agony, in this thought bomb that really just sucked everybody and killed them into this, like a big bubble. Into a void, in a way. And so then we jump out, and so he's just not trapped there yet, but he sees the pain and carnage. And then we see Bane and Xana. They're in a camp, and we won't go like shot by shot with the story. We just got to get through this prologue because there's a lot of interesting things that come about. Bane and Xana walk back to the Sith camp that's now deserted. They find looters. Bane kills them all, but he keeps a couple alive so that they can, pass on the rumor, myth that some Sith survived.
That's kind of stupid.
It is. Why wouldn't you want to be completely in silence?
Well, that's what he said he wanted to do. And
yeah.
He was telling people to go tell people about them.
And it's like you leave one. You don't need two necessarily, but you leave one alive so that they can pass on these horrendous stories. And so they find a manuscript in the camp. It's Cortus's camp, the head of the Sith Academy on Korriban that he was in. So like his principal, and it's a Sith manuscript from an old Sith ancient named Freedon Nad. He was from some comic books. It was, again, 3,000 years ago, ahead, so, long time ago, millennia ago. But back in the Sith and Jedi wars that happened generations ago. And it talks about, so he wants to go and find this Sith Holocron. And so that's where he says, okay, I'm going to go and look for this on Onderon. Or you go to Onderon, Rain, whose new name is Xana. Okay, I just want to make sure. So Xana is the girl, his little girl apprentice, like 10-year-old girl, if that. And you go to Onderon, and I'm going to go to Zune.
But isn't this 10 years later? So now she's like...
Not yet. Remember, this is the prologue.
Oh, right.
So you need to go to DXUN, Zune. Bane goes to Zune, which is a moon of Onderon. So again, with Star Wars books, you get new places mixed in with old places. So these are both new. So anyways, Bane's going to the moon, and she's going to a planet, and she has to get there on her own. But before they split up, Bane goes to show her the strength of the Sith thought bomb and how, and explains the rule of two to her. And in there, they find Darovit. And Darovit sees Xana, or his cousin Rain, and he goes to try to kill Bane, to try to protect her. So loving and all of that. But Xana knows there's no way Darovit can take out Bane. So she blows up his right hand using the Force to show Bane that this person isn't, anybody to worry about. In essence, she's like, I'm maiming you, but I'm saving your life. Mm-hmm. A very deep thought for a young girl, any young kid to have at a moment's notice, because she's scared of Bane.
It shows she's not a full Sith at this point.
No, and she's barely knows anything about the dark side. She just knows that she gets angry, and so Bane's going to have to be a teacher. So she saves Darovit's life, but completely blows up his hand. And I made a note in here, it's always the right hand in Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's always Luke's right hand. Obviously, Vader loses his. Just Anakin gets cut off, in the Count Dooku fight. I mean, there's a 50-50 shot, but it seems like it always leans towards the right. You ever notice that?
I mean, basically everyone is right-handed, so they have to learn how to do it with their left.
They will now, for sure. So right before they take off to go to those two places, the moon, Zune, and then Xana has to go to Onderon, we get another new character, Jonah, who was a Padawan of the leader of the Jedi of Light, the Army of Light, the Jedi Army, General Hoth. And we have an introduction to another character, reintroduction, Valentine Farfalla. Crazy, it's a mouthful to say, Farfalla. And Farfalla has now taken Joan as an apprentice. Okay, so that's an important note, because Jonah hears the story of the rumored Sith survived, and he tells Farfalla, and Farfalla, nope, they're all dead. So there is somebody besides those people that Bane let go that have heard about it, and this one believes it. Okay, Jonah believes it, but his master Farfalla does not. Okay, so Xana has to find her way off the planet. Can you talk a little bit about how she does that?
She's just adventuring, and she finds this shuttle with, as you put, a soldier, a farmer, and his two sons.
I didn't put anything. I'm not talking.
Anyways, they take her on board, and she asks to go to Onderon, lying and saying that's where her family lives. But they don't go, and they're lying. They know something's up. And they set course to go to the Republic fleet, which doesn't go well. That's not where she wants to go.
But that was their side of the army. They weren't Sith followers, so they're just going back. And they're
just returning home.
They don't want to drop her off, this little kid, on some, planet. They're like, we're going to protect you. It's all out of kindness and taking on a hitchhiker. This little girl, right? Taking her on.
And she tries to steal the blaster. She gets caught. And then she ends up killing a guy and kills everybody. And then takes the ship. So, in the end, she gets what she wants.
And she gets her ship, and before she kills the pilot, she makes the woman lock in the autopilot because she doesn't know how to fly to get her to Onderon. But we have this little girl who is resourceful, and
she just killed everybody.
And she had to kill everybody because she needs to get to Bane, and she needs to do whatever it takes. And that's a pretty telling moment for this young lady. The darkness that one, goes through. That children aren't really supposed to experience this stuff. And so that loss of innocence is definitely, there. Because this was premeditated. When she killed those two other people for killing her bouncer, La, okay, her friend La, that was just out of rage, and she didn't really control it or direct it at anything. So, really quite a pivotal, very few pages, but a very pivotal moment there. And then just to wrap up the prologue before we get moving on, Bane finally does get to Zune, the planet DXUN Zune, and all along he's having mental visions of some of the Sith that he killed, the head of the army, Khan, or the head of Sith Academy on Korriban, Cordis. He gets angry at them. They're just bugging him. They just won't go away, and he damages his ship. He gets angry and just lashes out. And so they have to crash land on Zune, but he survives miraculously. He finds the tomb. He gets, he finds it. And this is one of the things, I know I talked to you about it while you read it. He never uses the Force to grab something. He walks across this room and picks up the Holocron to leave. I just walk in, there it is, use the Force, bring it towards me. But in walking to it, the moment he grabbed it, there were these things that play really an important role the rest of the story. They're called obelisks. I envision them as being literally like a snail. And these things are a crab. These things that are stuck on a ceiling. And then once he grabs the the Holocron, these obelisks detach themselves and landed on him. Now, the interesting thing about these obelisks is you can't take them off. They stick on your skin, and they feed on your dark side. They release enzyme. They make you stronger, more powerful. It's like an amplifier to the dark side.
I don't think they necessarily feed on the dark side, but I think Bane was feeding the dark side to them so he wouldn't be physically told.
Well, yeah.
They just feed on your energy.
I think their energy, but with the dark side, if they don't get fed, they're parasites. They live off of him. And if they don't, they die. And you try to take them off and you kill them, they have a certain poison and enzyme in them that is fatal and will kill you. And so over time, these things will spread, as we'll talk about, in the story, over his body. They provide protection from lightsabers and weapons. And so as this stuff spreads, it's almost like you're putting on a suit of armor, bulletproof or lightsaber proof, around you. So he's got the Holocron, which he wants. He's got these new obelisks on him, and he takes one of these flying reptiles. They're called a Drexel. So imagine this big dinosaur that flies. And this was just so weird to me. Remember, he's on the moon, and he's going to fly this animal through open space over to the other planet, Onderon, and find Rain or Xana. And so he puts this Force bubble around him, and he leaves the atmosphere, and he flies through open space and enters the atmosphere. Now, I love space, but they always talk about in the movies that you have to become flying in for re-entry at a certain angle, or you skip off the atmosphere, or you burn up. Maybe his Force bubble allows him to just gently set himself in the atmosphere. Maybe that's just, I don't know, being space nerdy, whatever. So he meets up to Xana. She was being attacked by other people riding Drexels on this planet, Onderon, and he ends up killing them, and they are reunited.
10 years later.
10 years later. 10 years later. This is where we can talk a little bit more. The story takes off. Xana is high teens, low 20s at the most, but she's a young, beautiful woman who is forced Bane. Have you noticed that in these books, they don't spend a lot of time together? If you think about it through the plot. For a master and at least we don't see that for the last 10 years, maybe.
That's all the skip 10 years is. They're just trying.
Yeah,
the past 10 years they're together.
Yeah.
But he's busy doing other stuff. Like,
he's busy doing
busy
stuff.
With the Orbalisks.
Yeah.
Next book, he's busy with not dying.
And the next book we'll get to, you know, they have a house and money and finance. You know, they are manipulating industries and different stuff. So he needs somebody, because as he has the Orbalisks spread around him, and he's a big guy, it's hard for him to really blend in, you know, to other places. So she has to go and do a lot of things. So just a kind of, again, a brief synopsis of what's happening here. You know, she is off and infiltrates, seduces her way into a relationship with the second in command of a resistance group on a planet Serrano. This is the planet that Count Dooku ultimately comes from, you know, 1,000 years down the road. He's a family of nobility. He's a duke from this planet, so I recognize this planet. But she's with a Twi'lek called Kel, and she lets them know that Chancellor Valorum is showing up. Did that name sound familiar to you?
The blue guy.
Chancellor Valorum?
The blue guy.
I don't think he's blue.
He is blue. He's the blue guy with the horn.
No, that's Masa Maida. But that's from, Masa Maida is from, you know, Emperor Palpatine's crew that stands behind him. Chancellor Valorum is the first Chancellor in Phantom Menace, the one that they call for a vote of no confidence and get rid of him. And then Palpatine takes over.
How does he survive yourself?
I think this is just a family name, because remember, this is 1,000 years before the stuff. So, I mean, what we were saying, they introduce new characters or new places, but then they give you some old stuff, you know, some, you know, legacy names, things like that. And so what we ultimately have here is they set up an opportunity to kidnap, you know, the chancellor for this separatist organization who wants to, you know, take down this government on this particular planet. So we jump to Ambria, which is the planet that Bane, you know, has been staying on. It's the planet where we were introduced to Caleb in the last book. He's the one that saved. Saved Bane, not willingly. Do you remember how he got Caleb to help him?
Friend his daughter.
Held the daughter up by the Force over a boiling pot. So Caleb, this is the planet that's steeped in the dark side next to this little lake that they stay in, and this is a vital setting location for the next couple books. The kidnapping that jumps, you know, Jonah has been promoted, the kid from 10 years ago who is Farfalla's Padawan. He is now working for the Supreme Chancellor, so he's like his head bodyguard. And pretty much all of the Separatists are killed. There's a big fight, and he miraculously saves the Supreme Chancellor. And so it was a failure for the Separatists, who did not take it well, and they captured Xana, those that did remain, and took her to the big leader. And the big leader was a character named Hetton, who turns out is a big dark side collection guy. He has very minimal force abilities, like he can make things move, but she has to, in order to keep from dying by the people who capture her, she has to reveal herself as a force user, and he finds that amazing. He has a bit of a show and tell, and shows her all of his stuff. And he even has these Umbaran shadow assassins, who are his personal guards, who are just massively skilled warriors. They showed up in the Clone Wars, if you can recall. It was a dark planet, and they had some sort of like a helmet on where it kind of looked cloudy, and you just couldn't really, you know, see anything of them. So
was that the one with the general who?
I think so.
Bad.
Like Dex's Diner, the general.
Yeah, that guy.
I think it was that episode because it's dark fighting.
I remember that.
Okay, and so she, the Hetton tells her a lot of things, but also that on the planet Tython, which we saw in Mandalorian, that's the planet that Mando takes Grogu so that he can use that transmitter to reach out in the Force. Okay, remember that? So that is the planet, and Tython in the old canon, and then really even in the new books of the, you know, the old Republic, old Republic stuff. Tython is the home world of where the Jedi and Sith really kind of started from, and so that's where Hetton's master's base is. So a lot of information in those pages that we're summing up here, and so she goes, okay, how about this? You take your shadow assassins, go to Ambria, kill Bane. Because remember the whole thing about the Rule 2, you know,
the strongest needs to be in charge, and if you're strong enough to take him out, then they shouldn't have been in charge.
Yeah.
So head to Ambria and kill him, and then Hetton, you can be my apprentice. So that's where we're at. So Ambria, the dark planet, where she set these hitman to show up. Bane easily kills them all, kills Hetton, and he turns on Xana because Xana tried to take him out, and so he's pretty upset about this. And she defends herself, but she tells him, hey, hold on. You know, I brought them here so that I could tell you, and you believe me, about Tython and all of the stuff that's there, because he's struggling with making a holocron. That's his focus in this episode in this book, because later on in this book into the next book, his focus is on the Orbalisks and the ones that are, how they're taking over him and diminishing him over time. And so she's able to talk himself out of this, and so he takes off to go to Tython to find information about making holocrons, and then she has to stay back, and it actually sends her to Coruscant, to the heart of the Republic, to go into the Jedi Temple, to their archives where we've seen countless times. Obi-Wan looking for Camino. When else did we see it?
It's not in the archives.
It's not in the archives, right, where the planet. There was Ahsoka had an episode in there. It was a Darth or Cad Bane episode. A lot of Banes in Star Wars, right? Or at least two. And so he sends her on a field trip to research Orbalisk removal, find out about them, because he doesn't know anything about it. So the last little bit before we jump to Coruscant, it's a short little thing. Chancellor Valorum, who was saved by his Jedi strongman, he wants to show his gratitude, that's better, to Jonah. And so Jonah says, okay, well then how about a Jedi memorial on Rujan for all of those Jedi dead 10 years ago. And so Valorum puts forth a vote in the Senate, and it's going on. And so we jump to Rujan, where they are constantly having sabotage of their equipment. They can't get it made. And this is where we find out Darovit, with the no hand, he's been living as a hermit healer by himself. People of the area know that he can heal them, so he has some connection. He's just not really, really strong with the Force like Xana or Rain. So Jonah finds him, confronts him about it. He hears his anger about all the destruction and death that the war caused, Jedi or Sith. He doesn't care. And he mentions the Sith still survive, and Jonah, who had heard stories 10 years ago, he's intrigued by this, and so he brings Darovit back to Coruscant. So, we know as a reader something might happen here, because out of the whole galaxy we have Xana being sent to Coruscant, and now the Jedi are taking Darovit to Coruscant. And right? It's just perfect. Perfectly written. And so we jump to Coruscant and her experience in the Jedi Temple.
It takes a long while to get off of Ambria.
It does.
So Xana is in Coruscant, obviously using Bane's bidding, and she's gone through the temple. She's in the library at this point, and it's like searching through Wikipedia or the world's most annoying library. You can't find what you need.
Each data card,
too much information.
They're all data cards stored. If you remember from the games or the movies or the animated show, it's the hallway. It's like a bookshelf, just green and bluish lights, and just not even terabytes, whatever's beyond that. It's just all the collected knowledge of the galaxy is all there. And how do you sort through it? Keyword search, Dewey Decimal,
I think she ends up trying author, keyword search.
Yeah. Title only, stuff like that. So how does she, she's not just walking right into the Jedi Temple, into the library.
No. She is masking herself with the Force. Because obviously if you're really strong with the dark side, you're going to give off dark energy. and all of these Jedi are here in a spot full of good light, or light, compared to
Light. Yes.
dark light, whatever.
I guess in a way, it's like if you're in a room with a bunch of happy people, you're going to sense the person who's just fuming angry or just quiet. So imagine that with their, however they sense forces in people. You just know. And so she's there. I think she was there for days, really struggling, but just totally hiding herself. I think Luke does this to hide out in the new sequels. That's how he can escape, and nobody knows where he's at, and he can cloud himself. He cuts himself off from the Force. So a very similar thing.
And after days, like you said, of searching, she finally finds it. This article or something written on obelisks, and she's really excited. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. She doesn't have to look in the library anymore, and she drops her Force bubble.
She stops concentrating.
She stops concentrating on it, and now basically everyone knows that she's a Sith, at least in the library.
Well, if they were looking for it,
well,
you know what? Yeah. If people were looking, or they probably felt like a blip. It might have been really quick, but the moment she knew, she threw it right back up.
Yeah.
The protection.
Somehow, I don't know.
I don't know either.
This is, I don't know how this happens. At the same time, Darovit is in the library.
And I think he was even near her, looking at her.
Yeah.
Because they grew up together, but he hasn't seen her in 10 years. No. And so it might be like, that looks familiar. Is that what this person looks like after puberty and everything now? Is that them? And he noticed. And in the book, I think all you hear after she gets her control, you hear, rain?
Chapter's over.
Done. It's just like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. So how does she react? What happens?
It's not good. I'm blanking.
On what?
This.
Oh, well, talking to Darovit, how are you here? Why are you here? Back and forth, because he remembers her as being a Sith. He goes, I'm here to tell them about you. I've been taken by the Jedi to inform them about you and your master. The one, you took my hand. Remember, I know. I've seen Bane.
Should I tell him?
Well, he's going to, and so she takes him, and we got to get out of here. And I think he is still, the family, familial bond with her, and takes her, and they head to Tython to warn Bane, right? And as they take off, then Jonah comes back with Farfalla and be like, well, where is she? Where'd she go? Or, excuse me, where'd Darovit go? Because Darovit was supposed to go talk to the Jedi Council. And then they find what she was looking at, and where was she going? She was looking up a hyperspace route so she can get there. And so they piece it all together, and okay, well, let's go find this. And so they take off for Tython after them. And so she's flying there really quickly, as she go with Darovit, so that she can tell Bane about the obelisks, her mission, that she was successful, but then also the Jedi know of us. We've thought, for 10 years that we've, other than hiding out and, with rumors, etc., that we were flying under the radar, but they're coming. Mm-hmm. They're coming. So we jumped
to the end of that.
It is for the time being, because now we got to jump back to Tython and Bane. Do you recall the finding the holocron and all of the?
This is the weirdest thing.
It was. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember.
Describe it a little bit.
Well, he's looking for the holocron of Hetton's master.
Hetton's.
Belia Darzu, and basically she figured out how to make these mechanical, droid animals.
I think it was taking animals and then converting them,
stuffing them, but with mechanicalness.
It sounded very gory.
I don't understand.
Well, I remember there was a Rancor in there, so it's mechanized.
It was just kind of weird.
And all of these things had been there for a long time and had been, dying or decaying, but yet they're machines, so they're moving around, but yet the organic nature of these think of zombies, right? In a way, mechanical zombies. Then they're weaponized. Some of them whose charger packs had depleted, kept shooting, but nothing would come out because it was dead batteries. But there were other animals from Star Wars, or those different creatures.
He kind of goes on a rampage.
He has to, because there's just hundreds of them in this big open area. And once again, all he had to do was use the Force to bring the holocron across the room to him. But as he walks quietly through them, and it's like walking through the zombies, shielded, they can't see you. But the moment he grabbed the holocron or got near it, they activated, and he got wore out. He got hit a couple times, but his Orbalisk armor around his whole body. So that stuff is spread, and he has to wear a protective collar around his neck so that the Orbalisks don't go over a certain point on his neck. And then it's his hands, right? Mm-hmm. So at his wrists. I think
they said he only wears the wristbands or whatever at nighttime.
When he sleeps, that sounds familiar. And maybe even for the neck as well. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it sounds like his entire body is covered. But that makes me think, well, how does he go to the bathroom?
Star Wars, they don't.
I guess they don't. Maybe
they use all their waste.
They make no waste. My goodness. So his whole body's covered in that. But of course, he has clothes or Sith robes and wardrobe over that. And so that the machines, it was really crazy. So Xana shows up, lands, and says, "Hey, here's the information, but they're coming." And so the battle is, it's then right after they're there. It's like, here's the information, and then there's a ship coming in, and they're heading right towards this fortress stronghold, and it's a massive battle. Where it's
like 3 Jedi, I think.
I think it's 2 versus 2, so I think there's at least 4. But there's Xana and Bane versus a handful of Jedi, 4 or 5, yeah. And the fight, do you remember any specifics off the top of your head about what the fight was like?
I do remember the end.
So let me lead into that then. So Xana is fighting off a couple big, strong people. She's very analytical, and this is the reason I stayed away from Star Wars books. I didn't know how they could make lightsaber fights interesting, but they do. So
they use this form, so now I must use this.
Yes,
they're using this variation.
And they talk about how fast they're fighting. It's all it's just in tune with the Force, and it's just a blur to a casual observer. But they're able to sense the weakness or the body posture of somebody, which I imagine that's what it is in regular fighting or swordplay in real life, on Earth. But so they're fighting. They're able to whittle down a few. She can help out Bane a bit. But ultimately, they find out that there's an Ithorian, one of those hammerheads, and he is over there doing a battle meld.
Some sort of song or whatever that keeps them going.
He kind of connects them all together, which, if you read the Thrawn trilogy, the Heir to the Empire trilogy, we have a Jedi Master C'Baoth who goes dark, and that's his ability, is able to connect and help other people and bring them all fighting together so that they're not all, on their own.
Yeah.
So that leads up to, so then they have to go over and try to kill. So then they head over to try to take out the Ithorian, so that once they do, the battle meld is broken, and they're able to ultimately, take out a couple. But it is definitely a 2 versus 1 type aspect, if not more, because they got that other guy there.
Definitely.
But the ending then. So Bane gets over, and he's going to, if you remember in the first book, he has that ability to pretty much create a storm, a tempest, and blast force lightning, and just really be in tune with the dark side. Mm-hmm. And so he's getting ready to do that.
He does do it, and then the Ithorian Jedi, in this last breath maneuver, he puts this force bubble around Bane, and while he's still shooting it, it traps it inside or something.
So he creates that bubble, that force field around them, kind of like the droidicas have the blue shimmering field around them. Same type of thing, and none of the force lightning could get out. It just bounces back around and
hits Bane.
fries
He's just
all of them.
so powerful. He's like basically dead. It kills a few obelisks and it, like, scars his tissue. And he's basically dead at this point. I just said that, but he's dead. He's like incapacitated. He's just fallen over, but he's still alive.
Yeah, and Xana is going to have to save him or else he dies. And they talk about the Orbelisks. Remember, when they die, they release a toxin that's going to ultimately kill you soon. And so since some of them died, on top of his fighting injuries, etc., he is definitely not... it's not going well.
No.
But all of the Jedi were slain.
Yes.
Darovit,
The fight's over.
They had him hiding in a little cupboard, so they grab him, they grab the lightsabers, and get Bane on the ship, and they think of, we need to save him. The last time he was in trouble, where did we go? Where did Bane go on his own?
Ambria.
And they go back to where their camp is on Ambria because it's steeped in the dark side, but they're going to find Caleb, the healer. Now, the one main difference this time around is Caleb doesn't have his daughter around anymore.
Nope.
10 years has passed. He shipped her out because at any point Bane could come back, and it was unsafe to keep her there. And so she left. He doesn't know where she's at, who she's with, what her name is anymore, all of that. And we come here at the very, very end, and this is the end of the book. He's dying, and we need to get all the Orbelisks off. Caleb, you have to help him. And he says, no, I don't, and you can't make me. I'm ready to die, and you can't get to my daughter. How do they convince him to finally help? Do you remember that part?
Yes.
It's an agreement of sorts.
A deal.
Mm-hmm.
We will call the Jedi, and you can come and take Bane and me, I think. I'm pretty sure it was also Xana. But you can take both of us as long as you heal him.
So call out a message. You have to tell the Jedi that where you're at, and also you have to disable your ship.
So we can't go.
So sabotage your ship so you can't escape. When you're trapped here, you let them know where you're at. Then I will heal
All
Bane.
in return for Bane.
Yes. And she says, okay.
We'll do it.
We'll do it. We'll do it. And so then it's a painstaking removal. I remember him having to inject something into each Orbelisk in order for it to die or release. And it was just a very painful, traumatic, and Bane is out of it. If he ever comes to, he instantly falls back.
Are the Orbelisks all one organism, or did they breed like barnacles and now they've spread onto them?
Barnacles is a good way to think about it. For anybody that's watched Game of Thrones, the grayscale that they talk about, at where Mormont has to get it cut off by Sam Tarly. Because he's going to die from it. This is exactly how I'm picturing it, where you just have to peel it off the skin, and then it's all pink skin under it, and then you have to heal up. And so we jump to the Jedi showing up, and when they show up, it's weird, because the camp there's a dead body all cut up, lightsaber cuts, and then they walk towards Caleb's camp, because they don't know what's going on. This is just replying to the message. And then we get to the camp, and all of a sudden, this crazy man comes running out with a lightsaber. And he's...
Farfalla's lightsaber.
It's Farfalla, who was killed on Tython. And so it's just like a perfect... It's just like believable loose ends. They say this crazy guy's wielding a Jedi Master's lightsaber, and he's attacking us, so they all kill him. And we find out that Caleb was the one who was all cut up and dismembered. But what they don't check around is that there was the hidden cubbyhole that we talked about in the first book, where Caleb's daughter was hiding out. This time, Xana and Bane are in the hole, and she's doing that cloaking device, hiding their force from them. So they leave. So anybody that knew the Sith were truly alive, all those Jedi who went to Tython, they're all dead.
The Sith are kind of sloppy.
Darovit's dead, and Caleb's dead.
If you were even planning that you were... they had no idea that Bane was going to get shocked with this super lightning. And now he's back on Ambria with Caleb. Back when they were spreading the rumor that there were still Sith. Why? I don't know why you do that.
Why wouldn't you
Besides just to gloat that you're still alive.
I think it was just fear. They wanted people to fear them and think about them.
But his whole like ideal was we're gonna be only two, and we're gonna hide in the shadows, and we're gonna take down like
when we get strong, right? When we build up. And the next book, which we'll talk about in a little bit, in quicker detail because it's easier to summarize stuff in that book. But there is, having the presence of fear, mysticism, almost like a mythology. It's kind of like the Illuminati, whether they exist or not, but just the idea of them and the rumors and the myths of them kind of keep their stories alive.
It's the Da Vinci Code.
It's Da Vinci Code. Actually, Angels and Demons, but that's okay. It's all Dan Brown.
Series.
It is the series. At least you got that. So I loved how this ended, and I thought very smart and manipulative of Xana.
Very smart to keep the lightsaber, too.
The lightsabers, and it's planting evidence. And there's one thing we haven't talked about is her ability to control the minds of people. Sith sorcery, where
like the Night Sisters.
And it makes people see their worst dreams, makes them go mad, which she's going
twice
next book. Definitely attempts it twice. And then there is so she does that so that Darovit, she drives him mad. I mean, she sacrifices her cousin. I mean, she already blew his hand up. Total. I mean, not that we were thinking she was going to be saved.
But 10 years later, she's all gone.
She did everything. And at any point, she could have killed Bane or let him die.
Yeah.
Why didn't she?
She's devoted. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't want to kill him.
Why?
Or she has knowledge left to learn.
I think that's the thing. I think she's not ready yet. And even though he is weak right now, and you need to be the strongest
It's not a fair fight. Even if he is weak.
Yeah, it's not but
he's not at his best.
Well, Darth Plagueis, died in his sleep. Darth Sidious killed Plagueis in the sleep. So I mean, it's not like when you take them out. I think you take them out any way you can.
I think Darth Sidious and Xana are kind of different people because he's kind of crazy, do whatever, just to get power.
Well, yeah, and he's
It's
older.
just different ideals.
But it's still the rule of two, though, and. The apprentice, it's expected that the apprentice at some point tries to take out the main guy at some point.
Maybe that was what he was doing. Real Jedi Masters or Sith Masters don't sleep.
There you go.
If he's tired,
here, don't sleep.
If you take naps, you could be killed by your Padawan or a Sith apprentice.
Lock your door.
Lock your door. Good. So that's the end of the second book, and that was now we lead in. That was Rule of Two, and now we're going to lead into Dynasty of Evil, which Nolan's going to take charge of.
All right. Moving on to book 2.
Three.
Book 3. Sorry. No, sorry. This is Dynasty of Evil. I'm going to, for sake of repetition, by Drew Karpyshyn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when it was written or when it was published. But this is another 10 years after the second one.
Rule of Two.
Rule of Two. And a lot of time jumps. And really, the whole, theme of this is aging and dying. Bane doesn't want to die because, thanks to the Obelisks, his living time has shortened, and his heavy use of the dark side has been kind of not good for his body. And
his near-death experiences and aging in general.
But he's sort of fully healed from that. And he's just becoming an old man.
Older, yeah, I mean, so
like 40,
right now
50.
he's probably mid-40s to almost 50, I would imagine.
But the toll on him is, he's like body of an 80-year-old.
And constantly living in pain from the Obelisks and having to draw on the dark side, and he's frailer. He's starting to have a hand that twitches, convulses, shakes.
Here, it's not the right hand anymore.
It's the left. Well, he didn't get it cut off, though. It's always... Yeah, but that's a good point, Nolan. Thanks. And so he is hiding that from Xana, and he's disappointed in Xana that she hasn't attempted to take him yet. And she's been with him for 20 years now. Now, granted, she was a kid for the first 10 of those, but this last 10, the Sith Masters expect to be challenged, but he starts to wonder and fear, I don't know, that she's not up to the challenge, up to the task. And what does that mean for the Sith? For him to keep it going, he needs a strong one, and if she's not strong enough, he needs to get a new apprentice. But then there went 20 years.
Yeah. No challenging, nothing.
Of training. And
she just assumes that there's more to be learned, or now is not the time.
And as we go through the story, she starts to realize it. But he still realizes that it might be getting time. She notices the frailty of his hand clenching. And she starts to get a little suspicious, which I would think their whole relationship would be suspicion, especially after she brought those Imbarans to Ambria to fight him. With Hetton earlier. So yeah, you're right, Nolan. This book is especially the and this is the shortest of the three books, but it's him focusing on now that the Orbalisks are gone, right, and the toll that had taken on his body. He's weaker. They help amplify his ability to draw on the dark side, so he doesn't have those. He doesn't have the protection. If he fights her now, he doesn't have that armor on him,
chance.
Right? And so it's there's a lot at risk, and so there's a lot of back and forth. Him not really trusting her, him sending her off on a mission, but it has to be really
it's a
sidetracker. But she can't pick up on that fact, and we don't want. It's just a real cloak and dagger type.
It's like an Ocean's 11.
In a way, yeah, in a way.
Without the heist.
But. Talk about his now. They're away from a camp now, and we started to talk about it last book. But they have a life together. What's that like? What's their house like, and all of that?
They've, I guess, despite the last book ending with now everyone thinks that the Sith are dead, they're now very much alive. They are rich and powerful. On Tython?
No, not Tython.
Ambria, or the other one.
I don't remember.
They're on a planet, and they're very rich, and they have this big house, and
no one knows they're Sith, and they're not going. They're not going by their names. They're not going.
People.
Yeah. So what do they do? What's his days like? What's his goal? His objectives?
His goal. I'm pretty sure at this point he is trying to. I'm spotty on this. It's probably in the second book, but trying to make the Holocron.
The Holocron was mainly in the
one.
Yeah, he's going to have a Holocron.
Yes.
But he learned how to go about doing it in the second one.
He's trying to make one.
They have been, the Sith are still hidden, but they have developed a life, and they're very wealthy. Stock markets or trades, and just being manipulative of different places and governments, and being very cunning, not necessarily hardworking. But they're talking about he has like stocks and a hollow news going in his, so I mean he's paying attention to what's going on, but also always keep an eye on, is there the presence of Sith? And he spends a lot of time, finding Sith artifacts that are out and about and buying things on the black market. And he's got his own vault hidden behind, just like Hetton did, before. And so he's still studying, he's still growing. How to build the Holocron and finally doing it. But then as you were talking about, Nolan, then to figure out how can I prolong my life as I'm deteriorating. I'm not going to do a cloning thing. It's how do I keep my force, my essence, still going. So, and she is really, since he doesn't leave the planet or house very often, she's his messenger here, you go and do it, foot soldier, things like that. So that's their relationship, okay, leading into the story that plays out, that takes place really on a mining planet called Doan. That's the main setting location for really the majority of this piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you talk to us a little bit about the plot there?
One of his Sith artifacts has knowledge on this Darth and Dedu, and he's been trying to look for more information on that, where his tomb was, because it's been said that he lived on for centuries by passing his soul through to more and more people, and it prolonged his life in something called essence transfer. And so he wants to do this. He thinks it's his method to survive until Xana eventually goes against him or finds a new apprentice.
It's kind of his fallback plan.
Yeah.
Right, in a way.
A backup plan.
Yeah, backup plan's probably smart. Good. So that's his driving focus. So while he goes and looks for that and researches that, he sends Xana off to the planet Doan, because there's been some mining issues, some Sith artifacts that were supposedly brought about. And so talk about those people, because we're going to meet the Princess of Doan. We're going to meet a dark Jedi, Set Hearth. So a couple new people that play a heavy role in this particular story.
So you just said Xana goes to Doan, and there was this Jedi that was assassinated by a bounty hunter. We don't currently know who it is, but we will find out later.
Yeah. But it's a Itachi.
Itachi.
Yeah, which is you see them in especially during the Revenge of the Sith. They're kind of red skinned and have little horns that come down by the side of their ears, kind of like tusks on a way, that point out. And in one of them, I can't remember their names, that it's kind of cut off. So that's an Akachi, if that helps. It's a really bad description, but I can't think of their names.
And so there were miners on the mining planet, and they dug up what was assumed to be Sith artifacts, which carried the dark side. And so Med Tandar is the Jedi who was sent to investigate this, and he's there. He looks at him, but the Itachi bounty hunter comes and kills him. But how is a bounty hunter going to kill a Jedi? There's some disturbance from the Sith artifacts.
Like a radiation from it.
Some sort of field weakened him.
Messed him up a little bit.
He wasn't on his A game, and the Itachi bounty hunter killed him.
Yeah, she was able to have her gun or something, and she had it pointed, and the Jedi pulled the gun from her grasp and grabbed onto it. But she had already planned this, so she set it to overload, and so it turned it into a bomb, and it blew up right by him. So she wasn't manipulating the Force, but she knew what the Jedi were going to do. But there had been a lot of minor disputes, not like minor, but like people that mine, right? And so there were fights and there were deaths, and so this turned into a little battle. And in the past, one very prominent person was killed, assassinated, and that was the Prince of Doan. And so we are introduced to his widowed wife, Sarah, who does not get along with... She married into this family of royals, and the family doesn't really accept her. She's an outsider. Not much is known about her. We'll find out why later. But she's very down, and she wants revenge. And so a lot of her focus throughout this book, it's payback for killing her husband, in essence, right? We meet her bodyguard, who is a very competent individual, Lucia, Lucia, and she's been there to protect her all along, and that's a character that plays out. So it's Sarah, Princess Sarah, as well as Lucia. So those are the characters that are important. So this is why Xana...
There's one more character.
But this is why Xana was sent there, and these are the things that happen between those characters. So Sarah and Lucia. And we meet the Huntress, the Itachi assassin.
Spoiler.
Okay, well, we find out her name's Huntress. But great. So talk to us about Set Hearth a little bit, what he's like, how he's kind of a rogue wild card.
He was the former apprentice of Oba.
Yeah.
We're going to say Abba.
Yeah,
like
OBBA, sure.
Who is an Ithorian Jedi Master. He is a dark Jedi, so
Set is a yeah.
I guess like Githany, like a Jedi
Oh.
who went dark.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
And-
or Seboeth from the people who don't go Sith, but they just leave they kind of use the Force, and they're about profit. They're, you know what I mean? It's going against the Jedi traits, but it's not necessarily I'm going to be a Sith and practice the
Yeah.
dark side. Totally, you know what I mean? But definitely people who do what they need to do and kill when they need to do, and so it's like without a conscience. So he's there looking for the same things that everyone else is, the Sith artifacts, right? And so he's able to try to track. He's very successful. He's very wealthy in his own way, but nobody knows who he is. He's able to always hide his identity and get away with it. And so he falls underneath the interest of Xana. And so Xana tracks him down, and they have a little interaction.
I would call it more than an interaction.
A little bit.
He's a very smooth talker.
Smooth talker. He's very
Lando
suave.
Very rich, so
Yeah.
obviously has experience in this field. But, God, I don't.
He's at a party,
Yes, he's at a party.
and then he goes home, and Xana's waiting for him.
So Xana's waiting for him. She thinks that he's somewhat apprentice worthy.
Maybe, yeah. He's a bit inebriated, and so he notices that she's dangerous. And while he's acting drunk, he very quickly assaults her, tries to kill her, and she's able to take him out, and
Sith sorcery on
yeah,
him.
and puts him into a coma, really. And some people go crazy and die, but she puts him under. And if he's truly worthy,
He will survive these next few days, and if he does,
then maybe
apprentice.
we can talk and figure it out. Good. So that's the introduction of Set. A very Lando / Han, just in cocky arrogance.
Orlando.
Yeah, probably more Lando. But it's an interesting relationship between those two, because her potentially looking for an apprentice should she. So I mean, we see her thinking ahead, even if we haven't seen her act on it yet, or Bane hasn't seen her act on it. Her mind is rolling, because if she takes over, she's got to find somebody. So don't you want to have somebody lined up before you take out?
Definitely.
Because you always have to have two,
Or three.
or potentially three, I guess. But you can only have two. Good. So talk about what happens with the essence transfer. What are the ramifications of it? Do you recall what happens to the bodies? Things like that.
Yes. So if you use essence transfer, I think your body's just dead.
I think because it's all force powered and influence.
I don't remember the actual physical body.
I think it goes away.
Disappearing, but
Just
there's no body anymore,
Yeah.
and you take the body of whoever you've put your essence into,
whoever you targeted.
and it's like a mind will battle. You're trying to overpower the other soul, I guess, and kick it out of its body.
And take over their body.
Take over their body. But if you lose the so-called battle, then you're cast into like this purgatory forever.
Yeah, this oblivion, maybe in a way that the rest of those Siths were in that thought bubble, the thought bomb, and just gone.
Yep.
So it's a risk.
A lot
It's
of
not
emphasis on the forever.
You got to figure out who you want a strong-willed person, but you don't want them stronger than you, or else you're going to lose, right? And so that's going to play out here in a little while. So we have Xana gets set, and eventually, wrapping some stuff up, convince the Huntress to go and attack Bane at his at their house, right? And they're able to really, in a way, Bane defeats a lot of the people that they take with them pretty easily. But the Huntress is very quick, crafty, and able to immobilize him with some poison.
Very maneuverable.
Yeah, very quick and not too, I don't know, upset, not too... did I say Xana set this up? All right, let me pause for a moment. Sarah, the princess of Doan, her right-hand woman, Lucia, that sounds better. Lucia, she sends Lucia off to recruit the Huntress to help take out Bane, because up until this point, or very around this point, we didn't understand who she was, why the royal family wasn't really into her, how she was an outsider. It's because no one knows much about her on purpose. She had an assumed identity because it turns out that she is the daughter of Caleb, the healer.
Big spoiler.
It was a big spoiler. The daughter that we saw before he died had sent away, not knowing where she was or what name she was going by. And so with this, she is very much, she's ascended away from, a camp by the lake of a healer, but yet she is still very much Caleb's daughter, and, doesn't know what's happened to him until this book, but hates the Sith and remembers very much when that Sith Lord Bane shows up and hung her upside down over a scalding pot and was going to kill her. And so
something must have clicked when she heard of the Sith.
Then hears about the
there.
Sith Holocrons and all of this, rumors about the Sith, and finds out through backwater dealings or backwoods dealings, finds out all of these ideas of where Bane is. And so they find the Huntress. And they say, Huntress, we need you to find this person. And through the Force, she's not a Jedi, but she has some abilities where if she thinks long enough, she can locate people. And that's why she's a Huntress. I need you to find this person. I need you to think about them. And so when Lucia tracks her down on some space station somewhere, the Huntress says, okay, I'll do it. And they find out, where his house is. And so Doan, the royal family, she sends her crew and this Huntress to go and capture Bane, because Sarah wants her revenge for the man who, at this point, she knows that her dad has been killed, but caused a lot of pain, and she knows is very dangerous. So
Huntress gets him.
Huntress ultimately does scrape him with a knife, and stays alive long enough for the poison to interact with him and knock him out. And they're able to transport him back to Doan.
Enter Act 3.
Okay, yeah, the final little bit there. And so before we get to that setting of the prison, which is really interesting, and Nolan will talk about what that looks like in a minute, but Xana and Set, maybe the Dark Jedi, maybe her new apprentice, we'll see, show up at the house and see it wrecked, and they notice, Set notices, because he has time on Doan, that there is the royal house. There's some dead people here, their colors, and so they know at least where to look, because if they didn't, they wouldn't know where Bane was.
Yep.
And so they set out to, can we really call it a rescue? Because she's ready to take on Bane.
I guess it's a rescue so that she can kill him himself.
So that she can kill him. Nobody needs to kill him but her. Right. Okay. So that I would agree. So the third act, we go to the planet Doan. Sarah has him locked up in a cell, and no one will talk about what that cell looks like. And the prison is pretty crazy, and all of the fail safes and everything. But it's all going to play out. It's a good payoff. And the culmination fights are just outstanding. So
it's in this big, huge underground stone prison. It was built underneath the castle.
Kilometers and kilometers down.
Very deep, very deep. And there's this, like you said, fail-safe. It's a self-detonation button. Like
that
near
they
the
can
top.
hit, yeah.
And it just blows up the whole thing. It crushes you, and you can't get out. Just a last emergency thing, which I thought it was very nice that they would tell us that, so we obviously know what's going to happen.
Right. You show the gun early on, it's going to go off.
Yeah.
You show the self-destruct abilities, that it would seal off everything and trap people down there, so that nobody can get out. And these are illegal. They've been shut down for a long time.
45 years, I think.
That sounds right. And so Sarah is opening it back up for Darth Bane.
Yep.
And down there. So they're down there. They're, he's still comatose. There's still medical cocktails to keep him, out of it, his inability to reach the Force. Sarah is really turning dark, willing to do anything for payback. So very, very dark-sided thoughts. And we see a moment here because Bane's head's down. He's hung up on a wall. And Lucia, her chief security, recognizes the person. Can you talk a little bit about her? Because we talked about her in the last podcast.
So she has this sort of speech with him, and they're kind of just talking. And, less talking, more just him sitting there, she's talking. But we find that she is... I think she was the sniper on the Gloomwalkers that Bane take out like 10 in like 5 seconds.
Now, can you quick brush up of what the Gloomwalkers, who they were?
The Gloomwalkers was Dess's old...
Yeah, Bane's name before.
Bane was Des.
Mm-hmm.
Des had this troop, his own 501st.
Yeah.
And he just carted them around and was this big savior despite not being the leading officer. He still basically saved them all the time.
And she remembered. But remember when he defied their leader, knocked him out, and then saved everybody, he was carted off to eventually, everybody thought, to execution.
They just thought he was dead.
And he went to Korriban and became a Sith Lord, but nobody knew that because he assumed a new name and disappeared. And so for Lucia, this is her old battle buddy, and so she ultimately wants to save him. Wants to, to pay him back, whatever. Plus, she doesn't like how Sarah is falling, can't really say to the dark side, but falling and going against, more ruthless, but going against everything that she believes. So, lucky for Bane, Lucia starts to give him some medicine or some liquid that counteracts the toxin that was paralyzing him. And he eventually slowly wakes up after everybody's left and
he gets out.
Goes crazy, and this is where it's just high speed, foot on the gas pedal to the very end. I mean, tons of. So he's going nuts, trying to find his way out.
Xana's here now.
Set and Xana show up because Set knows exactly where they're going to be at. A person of this caliber, and so they set in one of the hangars and work their way down. Bane senses Xana showing up, with some intent, and so it's just. It's not
like a cat and mouse chase because
in a way
keeps leaving these fake trails.
He tries to get her, not really hiding his essence, but yet getting her to go a different. He needs to escape.
Yes.
He's got to get out of there. She has to make sure that he doesn't get out of there.
She can do the thing, and he just wants to go do the essence transfer.
Eventually, yes, but at this second, he just needs to get away.
Yeah.
The Huntress is there. Sarah and Lucia are there. And so it's just through all of these tunnels. If you need to have a visual, think about like running around the Death Star with all the tunnels and people just missing each other. Little fights here and there. Lucia eventually gets killed and crushed, by some rocks from the Force. Sarah is escaping to some degree for a little bit. But Bane and Xana square off. And Bane doesn't have his lightsaber. And they're fighting, and just through sheer force and being creative, it took a while for her to realize that. And then Bane is able to bring down the ceilings and the rocks in order to protect them a little bit. So Sarah's parting shot before she ultimately gets out of there is to hit that self-destruct button. And, there's a bunch of other things that happen, Set and, get fighting. And we have the Huntress. Bane gets away from Xana.
Set fighting the Huntress,
trying to get away. And Set eventually does sneak away because he's sneaky. But the Huntress is looking for Bane because when Bane was captured, she stole his holocron about essence transfer, and she has this lightsaber. And so when Bane shows up, she's by the last ship in the hangar. I'm thinking they're fighting, but I don't even know if she goes down on a knee, but she offers him his stuff, and I want to be your apprentice. And okay. He's like, you're saving me and you're giving me this stuff. That's good. My other apprentice is trying to kill me. And so he takes off for the finale of, back on Ambria, where Xana obviously shows up. Now, the Huntress has a new name at this point, since she is a Sith Lord, since she is his apprentice. She's going by the name Cognis. So she is referenced with this name from this point out. Cognis is there and tells Xana, I'm not fighting, I'm just hanging back, and you two figure it out, and whoever wins, I'm going with the strongest. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, can you go into detail about what this fight ultimately looked like? I mean, it was one that...
It's just back and forth.
Bane really wanted it. He talked in about it forever.
I think he was very hyped up for it. It was very back and forth. They're very equally matched. Like, he taught her everything that he knows, but she knows Sith sorcery. He kind of doesn't.
And she finds out in fighting that he never went full speed with her. Mm-hmm. So he was holding back. Very similar to when Bane in the first book was being trained by the Twi'lek Kasim, mm-hmm. the swordsman. And then when Bane ultimately had to fight him, he's like, oh, this guy's doing stuff that I've never seen him do before.
Very smart.
You've got to hold some cards back, right? So you can play them later.
For a while, she was really getting beaten on. And we thought that Bane was like, oh, he's just going to win, take Cognis. But then all of a sudden, she starts to take the lead. It's definitely going more Xana's way. She's using this weird, like brain thing that she used earlier on set.
Yes.
Like the nightmare in your head thing.
And he can kind of defeat that. But remember, they're on the area that's heavily in dark side. She uses the dark side in her sorcery to, and this is what's kind of weird, so follow along, that created these dark side...
They were like whips or something.
Like tentacles. These things come out of the ground that's smoky. Okay? And so it's a smoky arm, and it goes after Bane, and he tries to hit it with a lightsaber, and it just cuts through, so there's no mass to it, but yet there's some structure. But
it's kind of weird.
If the smoke tentacle touches Bane, it hurts him. It burns away flesh. It's pain. And so he's focusing on this. And she's over there on the side of the battle, just really kind of that battle meld in a way, really using her ability to control this. So Bane realizes, in order to defeat this, I have to kill Xana. But these things really take a toll on him, and he's ultimately, through his fighting with Xana and these things, he's dying, and he loses an arm, I think, at one point.
Yep.
It just snaps it right off, cuts through it like it's a lightsaber, and that leads him to his dying breath, his dying action.
This big flash of light, and we're like, oh no, what happened? And it's the essence transfer, or at least an attempt for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of open-ended at the end, because obviously he's dead.
Well, so he reaches out to explain this, and then we can leave the open-ended part. So take it to the end of the story. Essence transfers.
The essence transfers. We don't know if it fully works. And away walks Darth Xana, the new leader of the Sith. And she walks over to Cognis, asks, do you know about the Rule of Two? Then, yes, but still kind of explains it. And then it just shows the cycle of it from book 1 to book 3. And then that's it. And then there's a prologue.
Yeah, and if you have read these, and to go back and look at it, because I think, and we're going to hear something from the author in a little bit, but Bane talks about how his body is just instantly gone with his force, and he's fighting, and it talks about him fighting against Xana's will, and he can see out of her eyes, and he's fighting, and then it's blackness. And this scene then is, like you said, Nolan, Xana is walking back and converses with Cognis, the old huntress who was just sitting around. And at one point, Cognis notices that Xana's right hand is... Left hand is twitching or doing the same thing that Bane's stuff did at the very beginning of this book when he was deteriorating. So... this is a debate at the end, and it's one that I thought about. I'm like, is this really Darth Xana completely? Did her will win out and defeat Bane, and so Bane's no more? Or did Bane actually
Is he just getting
overtake?
used to the left-hand clench?
Right. Was there some ominous something that was left over, and maybe there's a part of Bane that's still in there, if that makes sense. You know.
The author completely disproved
Well, yeah.
claims.
Well, he did. And on his website, Drew Karpyshyn talked about dealing with he says that he never meant it to be any confusion out there. He knew that no matter who won, people were going to be angry. I mean, these are Darth Bane's books, so you kind of envision Darth Bane would win out, and then now he's trapped in a woman's body. But the essence transfer did work. It's just he wasn't completely successful, and she beat him, defeated him, according to the authors. But as you read it, you can kind of see how that would play out. But then, just like in TV shows and things, when somebody dies, you're always like, are they really dead? Did we see the body? Are they going to come back? And he actually says in here, in the blog post, he goes, I blame M. Night Shyamalan for people who are not, who just don't take it at face value. You're expecting something else. And he says that, it is Darth Xana. It's not Darth Bane. It was never meant to be, confusing at any way. And he even talks about that, if you look back at the last couple pages, is that, the narrator is Cognis at that point, because, he refers to Xana as her throughout the scene. Okay, and so Xana or the Huntress, Cognis, is just an observer of what's going on. So it's really an interesting thing to debate. Even though I know what the author's saying, I kind of fall in the realm of, oh, but this could be so cool if he is just secretly this.
Like, if he's, training, if he did pass into Darth Xana, and he always trains every new apprentice to be weak-willed but very strong in the Force, you could always just, he could be Darth Sidious, and then he could be Anakin, and then he could be...
If he went for 1,000 years.
1,000 years, which is longer than...
Yeah.
Andedu got.
Andedu, yeah.
Still, that would be pretty cool.
It would be, and somebody who is just, again, dark side to say these people are cool, they're murderers and all that, but for such a strong individual who we just really learned from and grew with and experienced with, in a way you want them to succeed, even though he's an anti-hero, right? But the author says, Bane, even the character Bane, he wanted somebody to succeed him if they were strong enough. That's the goal of the rule of two. If you truly buy into the rule of two, only the strongest will survive an altercation. So what better way to figure that out than this essence transfer? The stronger of the two is going to be...
I mean, he is sacrificing himself to...
He's attempting.
For eternity.
Yeah, he's attempting, yeah. But the payoff is he succeeds and then has to go and train somebody else. But it would have proven that he was the stronger and she wasn't a person who was worthy. Mm-hmm. So that's where I can see the Xana aspect, where she is actually the stronger of them. Yeah. Physically at this point, maybe she's been studying, who knows, but now she has all of their stuff back at the house, and his holocron and everything else. And I think the Huntress would be a really good, formidable foe for her. So, good.
Those are the books.
Those are the books. We just wanted to try something different. So for those that made it through, we did the best we could. It's really challenging to go through so much content in a short amount of time. When books take 8 hours to read or whatever. 11, and we just wanted to talk about them briefly. We obviously gave spoilers, but they're still good reads. I really suggest going to read them, even if you made it through without reading them ahead of time. I think you'll like the journey. Agreed?
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Going forward, we're getting back to our Mandalorian rewatch. So look for that coming up here soon.
Don't try to do the outro already. Which was your favorite book?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stop skipping.
Well, the first one for me, since that's one I recommended to people. Mm-hmm. Actually walked people through and instructed them, talked about it, with them. The thing that really, when I think of each of the books, they each have their big moments. This is the essence transfer, the big fights that he has, the stone prison break. That's cool. The second book dealing with the Orbalisks. Fight in Xana. Really
like
growing its own
Holocron stuff because I always
Holocrons.
wondered how you got
Yeah.
a personality into that, how it worked.
Yep.
Like, it was always cool.
Yeah, and they really go into great detail. But the first book for me was the first time that I distinctly remember them going into the detail of Sabak, but also what it was like at the Sith Academy. And after reading, later on some Jedi Academy books or hearing about Luke put together an academy, it was interesting to me to see how would schooling be for the Sith. And I just found that very fascinating. I wasn't a big fan of the end, which the end is pretty much just the comic books, the stuff that Drew was stuck in putting into his story.
With the bouncers.
But I would still go with the first book, I think, is my favorite one. But I do appreciate the journey that they all went on. And even with these 10-year gaps between these books, I think there's plenty of opportunity if somebody wanted to
Put another book in there.
If not more books, more stories, or more comics, or a TV show. I would be all in if they wanted to do a TV show. Mm-hmm. So that's my favorite. What do you think?
I feel like reading the end of the third one for the first time was like, ooh,
right.
There's got to be a force because I read it like he's still alive.
Yeah, I did too.
Like the clenching, you're like, wait a minute,
that's
he's
a little
still alive.
subtlety.
And the book ends. It's like, oh. And then, like, even in the prologue, we didn't talk about the prologue. Set Hearth has the holocron and the other thing, and he ran away.
So he's out there.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that always made me, and he was worried that somebody would be chasing him, so he would have to go out and disappear again. So, yeah, it just seemed like there could be more story if they wanted to take a Darth Xana approach and just write about her.
She's the less interesting of the two.
Well, it's true, but we had less time with her, So you think the third one then for you? Is that what I'm hearing?
I like the start of the first one, but yeah.
I
There
get
were
it.
always good spots and dull spots
I agree.
in every book.
I would agree. But I think I've read the first one probably now. This was probably at least the fourth or fifth time that I've gone through the first book, so I really I enjoy it. And you put enough years between them, you kind of get to experience certain moments again for the first time because you forgot about certain things, and you get to enjoy it. So now, can we do the sign-off, sir? Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No Chris O'Dowd.
Oh, my God. In a book?
Yeah.
No.
They should just name drop him.
Just for the heck of it. So, again, thank you for listening. We'll be back next time with Season 2 of The Mandalorian.
The Marshal.
So back with The Marshal, one of my favorite episodes. And if you have any questions, if you just have comments like we talked about at the very beginning, thanks again to Sarah for reaching out. We've really enjoyed talking about those over the course of these several episodes and podcasts. So reach out to us on our email. It's mallratspod@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter or Instagram at mallratspodcast. Either way, you can find us, stream us, and reach out to us. We'd appreciate it. All right?
That's it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for listening. I'm Bob.
I'm Nolan.
Hey, and have a great day.